Many werewolves are responsible for a great number of human casualties. In the 16th and 17th centuries, during witch hunts in Europe and North America, many women were tried and executed. However, many men were also suspected of being werewolves. This article will list the victims of these persecutions, as well as look at more modern cases involving werewolves, and even a few animals that were believed to be. It should be noted that many of these people may have been serial killers and their executions were deserved, but there were some innocent victims among them. One such case is the story of Petrus Gonzalez, who appeared in 1537. He was also called the Man of the Wolf and the Man of the Woods. However, he was not a murderer. He apparently suffered from a genetic condition known as hypertrichosis. His body was completely covered in thick fur and his head resembled a wolf's. He originally appeared at the court of the French king before being sent to the court of Margaret of Parma, a noblewoman and regent of the Netherlands. His portrait is part of the collection of the Chamber of Arts and Curiosities of Ambrose Castle, where it is kept along with other strange paintings, such as the portrait of Vlad Tepes, the prototype of Dracula. Gonzalez was also one of the few men to participate in the Mardi Gras Carnival in New Orleans in the 1970s as a member of Satan's entourage. His unusual appearance inspired people to create a special costume. Gilles Garnier was a contemporary of Gonzalez and spent a lot of time in France. However, unlike Gonzalez, he had no physical problems. He was a disgusting cannibal and serial killer. Also known as the Hermit of Saint Benoît, Garnier committed child murders right in his home. His victims were boys and girls between the ages of 9 and 12. Legend has it that Garnier received a magic ointment from a ghost that gave him the ability to turn into a wolf. He confessed to 4 murders and was found guilty not only of turning into a wolf, but also of witchcraft. He was executed at the stake. Peter Stumpp was accused of selling his soul to the devil, gaining the ability to turn into a wolf. Along with his mistress Catherine Trompin and daughter Bill, Stumpp committed 15 murders and dismembered the bodies of his victims between 1564 and 1589. After the hunt for the werewolf, eyewitnesses claimed to have seen Stumpp attempt to regain his human form by hiding behind a bush, but was captured while skinning himself. At his trial in Cologne, he was found guilty and sentenced to the same fate as his victims. The judge ordered him to be crucified on a wheel and his flesh burned, using red-hot skinning tongs. His legs, arms, and head were chopped off with a wooden axe and his body burned. Stumpp's mistress and his daughter had to watch the execution, and then they themselves were burned at the stake in 1589 in Germany during a Halloween celebration. Known as Demon Taylor, this man's real name is unknown. He preferred to slit the throats of his victims and then eat their bodies. The total number of victims is unknown, but most of the murders appear to have been committed by him in the locality of Chalon near Paris, France. The alleged werewolf was sentenced to death on December 2014, 1598, and burned the next day. A huge crowd gathered in front of the pyre to watch the execution. Witnesses of the execution then said that unlike other werewolves who repented and admitted all sins, Demon Taylor swore and blasphemed the whole world until the end. In the XVII centuries, Wolves were hunted in the same way as witches, especially brutally in the lands of the Germans, then part of the Holy Roman Empire. The wolf from Ansbach has no human name. Apparently it was a real wolf, not a human who could turn into a wolf. Nevertheless, the residents claimed that this wolf was their mayor, who had turned into an animal and hated the whole town. The villagers hunted down the beast, hunted it down with dogs, and drove it to a well where it was caught and killed. Despite the fact that the wolf was already dead, the residents accused him of various murders and then dressed him up in clothes and a beard to make him look like the former mayor. They even hung him from a gallows just in case, and only then put the corpse on public display in the museum. In 1691, Estonia was in the eastern part of the Holy Roman Empire, which was also home to an alleged werewolf named Hans. Hans, 18, was forced to confess that he had been turned into a wolf by Satan and had lived for 2 years hunting in wolf skin. He had fang scars on his legs, which the court used as evidence of a werewolf bite. At that time, the accusation of making a pact with Satan was sufficient grounds for a death sentence, regardless of whether the person was considered a werewolf or not. Livonia, another Baltic country, also had its werewolves. The most famous of these was Thys of Kolterbrunn. He began to claim that not only was he a werewolf himself, but that he had teamed up with other werewolves to fight the devil and witches in hell. However, the court did not believe the story and punished Thys by beating him with a whip and sending him into exile. The case has been the subject of scholarly research and publications. In the 18th century, werewolves were still feared in Europe. One of the most famous werewolves in history is the Beast of Gévaudan, but its exact nature is still unknown. It could have been a werewolf, a lion, a hyena, or a hybrid of a dog and another predator. In total, the beast attacked 10 people, of whom 13 died. The beast was killed, and its effigy was displayed in the Palace of Versailles. However, the killings did not stop until a year later, and it is still unknown who killed the beast and whether it died a natural death. In the 19th century, people were still accused of being werewolves, although the trials of witches and werewolves had already stopped. At that time, serial killers were already known to exist, but they were sometimes still referred to as werewolves. Manuel Blanco Romasanta became the first officially registered serial killer in Spanish history. He confessed to 13 murders but was convicted of only 9. He was sentenced to death by hanging, but the sentence was commuted at the last minute. His life before he became a murderer was strange. His parents thought he was a girl and raised him as a daughter until a doctor confirmed that Manuel was actually a boy. After growing up, he married but then lost his wife, and in 1844 he was accused of her murder. The accusations continued until 1850, when the trial of the maniac finally began. He killed both men and women, totaling between 10 and 47 people. The circumstances of Manuel's death also remain a mystery. Prison records have not survived, and rumor has it that he either died in prison from illness or was shot by a guard who hoped the prisoner would turn into a wolf under threat of death. All descriptions of werewolves from the 15th through the 20th centuries speak of them as deadly monsters known for their inhuman crimes. One such killer who truly deserved the title of monster was Albert Fish, also known as the Brooklyn Vampire, the Boogeyman, the Gray Man, the Moon Maniac, and the Werewolf of Wisteria. This is the most disgusting and vile man on our list. Fish was guilty of at least 4 murders and suspected of 3 more, and was eventually convicted of the kidnapping and murder of Grace Budd. The details are too gruesome to write about. Even worse, he wrote a letter to the mother of a 10-year-old girl detailing how Grace resisted and how he eventually dismembered her. Fish also gave a vivid description of how he killed and ate a 4-year-old boy named Billy Gaffney. Authorities eventually discovered that Fish had stuck a huge number of needles into his body and engaged in all sorts of sexual perversions. Not surprisingly, he was sentenced to death in the electric chair.